we're going to introduce this stuff to make housing more affordable. If you make it so people qualify for bigger mortgages, that's going to push housing prices up, but you're putting a significantly higher burden on the consumer in both the price they're going to pay for the home and the cost that they're going to pay in interest.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
We are, Nolan, we're making this a bit of a tradition here, having you back at the end of the year as we're...
Nolan, we're recording. Get back
your
here.
Your light looks good. We're good. We're going. We're live. We're doing it live.
Wait. You said we're good. Okay, my bad.
Welcome back, man. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. I was going to tell you this. So on Instagram, me and Steve send each other stupid memes all the time, right? Just back and forth. And there was one that I saw of these two people having a conversation. And at the end, the guy's like, "Thank you so much for coming on my podcast." And then the guy's like, "Oh, I should probably let you know, like, these microphones aren't even plugged in. This isn't a podcast. We haven't been recording anything. I just wanted to talk to you. And I knew this is the only way I could get you over to my house to have a conversation by telling you I had a podcast. So I kind of feel like this is just my way, Nolan, of getting you back to have a conversation for an hour, is inviting you back on the podcast. Although this is technically a real one."
I love it. I'll take that excuse any day.
So what's new in mortgage world on your side? I got lots of topics I want to cover today, but just looking now back, I guess, at
No changes in mortgages lately at all.
Yeah, I've been pretty calm waters. What's your perspective looking back at 2024?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting year, right? The Bank of Canada did a whole bunch of things that people both expected and hoped for, and I think it probably ended up being better than what a lot of people expected with respect to where they went with rates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fixed rates were pricing that in September, so I mean, people were getting really good deals. I think the biggest challenge now is you've got people who are kind of on that fence of, do I buy and get a good deal, or do you wait for interest rates to come down even further? And it's a tough question for most people if they don't have somebody advising them, but the reality is you can take advantage of both right now, and we're seeing a lot of people just picking the right mortgage so that they can buy the property in the fall when there's not as much competition, and see where the competition goes. But it's a different market than we've experienced for the last 3 or 4 years. The thing that gets me is the number of realtors that are leaving the industry just as it's about to get good again.
Yeah, they're not waiting long enough. It's like that meme of someone digging for diamonds and stopping right before, and you can see where they stopped. I feel like that's kind of what's going to happen. How do you feel now moving into 2025? I know we're all in different markets, but just general buyer feeling, confidence, or is sales volume finally going to, in Calgary's kind of been an anomaly, I guess, but just general Canadian real estate sales volume, we think finally will pick up a bit here?
Well, I mean, Calgary is the one area that has completely bucked the trend and is going the opposite direction now. Like, it's the market that it's been struggling relative to Toronto, Vancouver, and whatnot. Even Edmonton Edmonton sales are through the roof, setting records, and Calgary's just kind of settled back into normal, which I find is really interesting. So that influx of migration into Calgary's kind of slowed down. It's moved a little bit into Edmonton. Nice thing for us is, YouTube really made it so that we became a national company overnight in 2021. Right. We see all the different markets, and we see the pickup in Toronto, we see the pickup in Vancouver, and it all kind of balances out in our book of business now. But it's interesting watching the different pockets and really having to know the individual markets as opposed to just going all of Canada is crazy.
Right.
So what do you mean it's going to get good again, or just it's about to get good again?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers, those October sales numbers up 30% in some markets. Toronto was up 40% in sales. Those numbers seem like they're heading in the right direction. Like, the confidence is back in real estate. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think we're going to get back to above average numbers, but I think for the most part, barring anything weird happening, we've kind of found that floor, and it's a more normal market again, more or less across Canada, or at least it will be by the looks of it going into 2025.
I'm excited about the fact that there's overall confidence again. Even like sellers I've been talking to for a while that have been saying like, I'm not sure if it's the right time even for me. Now they're like, all right, I want to hit the market early next year. So normally you find it on one side or the other. I found it a little bit recently on like both sides. People are like, okay, now we know what our value is. Like you can kind of figure it out because we've been here for a little while, and then the sales volume has finally jumped up. Nolan, do you remember the bet that Steve made with you on the show at the end of last year?
Oh, I don't. This is going to be good.
Steve,
Did I win?
Do you remember? I don't know.
I didn't watch it again. We're not there yet, though. It was about my remortgage. What did I say? 4-something-9 at Manulife, which is not quite there yet, according to Manulife. So what do we say? 459?
459 on your renew. Like what would it be at when Steve has to renew his mortgage? But Manulife rates are higher anyways. So
yeah, Manulife, Steve likes to take punishment from higher rate lenders for tricky products, which is kind of cool. What did you end up renewing at, and when was it?
I'm not renewed yet. It's March. It's coming up.
Oh, it's March.
Yeah. So I'm still I'm on a 275 still. And I think it's March 31st, if I'm not mistaken, that I come up. So the question is, do I put it all on? It's a very low balance now, thankfully. But do I swap it all over to the line, to the Manulife one, or do I lock a portion in? Because I'm not super happy with either of those rates right now from that institution.
Well, if you ask Manulife and you flip it over to a completely a line of credit, you're technically mortgage free according to them, even though a line of credit is technically a mortgage. Like, oh, you know how many people we've heard over the years that have Manulife ones, and they're like, yeah, we paid off our mortgage, and it's like, congratulations, that's amazing. How'd you do it? And they're like, we put it all on line of credit, and it's like, you understand that a mortgage is anything that you owe money against that is registered against the title of your property, right? Like
the Manulife line of credit, you're only paying interest on, though, correct?
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. So your payment's lower, but your interest is higher. So
right.
That's what I'm struggling with, actually, is like, do I want to pay $900 a month in interest, or do I want to pay $700 on a fixed term? But then the fixed term, I guess the prepayment, I'm probably not going to hit each yearly prepayment. So it's probably better to get it in the lower, because I do lump sum, right? So it's probably better to get it in the lower rate in a fixed product, I would think. But the flexibility that I have there is amazing with the Manulife One product, because I'm such a saver, has saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest since I've had it. Like legitimately a ton of interest. So I don't know. I'm still struggling with it.
It's a great product if you have lots of cash flow coming in and the money's sitting there. Like if you would normally have $10,000 or $15,000 at any given time that's sitting in a checking account, it can be a really good product. But I think at the end of the day, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The reality is if you look at the pure interest costs and you go, do I want to pay $700 or $900? I mean, if you choose to pay $900, I've got some oceanfront property in Alberta here I want to sell you.
So we're now looking at this going forward. I think, I don't know. I actually don't know where rates are going to, I could see rates staying exactly where they're at. I could see rates going down a little bit, and I could see tariffs bringing rates back up with inflation over time. Where do you think our rate environment is going to be now that we're turning the calendar into the new year? So let's say if we're looking for up until, say, I don't know, the busy market, let's call it April 1st, where do you think we're going to be? Are we going to see massive I almost said,
whoa, Stephen.
I almost said fluctuations instead of fluctuations. Do you think we're going to see any
on the podcast? You're going to have to bleep that out now.
You
can leave it in. I was misspeaking. Are we going to see big fluctuations over the next little bit here, or can buyers and I guess refinancers like me kind of act right now with some level of certainty and not having tons of regret 6 months down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think with respect to regret, it's all about positioning yourself so that you've got some flexibility, whether that's, taking a fixed rate mortgage and making sure you're getting it at a non-bank lender so the penalties are lower if rates do go down. Or if you're a little bit more risk inclined, you can roll the dice, take a variable and see where interest rates go. really what it comes down to is risk tolerance on that part of the question. And then with respect to the direction of interest rates, I'm looking at Ben Robideau's report from Edge Analytics right now. And I mean, you've always got bank economists that have a tendency to go one direction. You've got real estate economists that have a tendency to go at one direction. Ben does research for, in general, hedge funds and pension funds. And a lot of it's real estate focused. But when you look at his estimates for where he thinks interest rates are going to go, I mean, I'm looking at a chart right now where he's saying by July of 2025, he's expecting another almost 2% rate reductions, which he's a smart dude. I don't know.
Wait, say that over again.
He's expecting another almost 2% rate reductions by July from the Bank of Canada. And that obviously 2025, which I think is probably a little bit on the far side of where they would go. But most of the expected policy rates are seeing it around 3%. So the banks are saying around another quarter basis point drop, or 25 basis point drop between now and let's call it April. He's thinking it's going to be a lot more than that. And yeah, I do think the whole tariffs conversation plays into that. I think the biggest risk for the Canadian economy right now is actually the global geopolitical situation and the potential for conflicts. And those potential for conflicts actually have a lot of potential with respect to the oil industry, which if you take a look at the 1970s, which is what everyone's always scared of, the charts for the original bump up in interest rates prior to the big bumps up in interest rates look very similar in the early 1970s to what our charts look like now. In fact, it was around the 3% inflation mark where things turned and went the other direction. Now, what most people don't factor into that is that there was two big oil shocks. There was Yemen and another oil shock that the name of it escapes me, but there was two oil shocks in basically a 18-month period in the early 1970s. And that was really the catalyst for inflation to kick back up and go way, way, way above and beyond. Now, if those two oil shocks wouldn't have happened in the 70s, we would have never seen the inflation rates and the interest rates that we saw back then. The question is, going into 2025 with the geopolitical situation, is are we going to see some sort of event that causes prices of pretty much everything to go up again, similar to what happened in the Suez Canal in 2022? I want to say that was. So when they let me drive that ship through the Suez, and then I was responsible for all the interest rates going up, at least according to some of my YouTube followers. But that's the real question, is what's going to happen with respect to the geopolitical situation. Are interest rates going to go up as a result, or inflation going to go up as a result of some outlier event similar to what COVID was? Right. Or are we going to see 3 or 4 years of stability? And if we see 3 or 4 years of stability, well, the chances, I shouldn't say the chances of interest rates going up anymore, but the outlook for interest rates remains pretty flat. And there's two things that you really have to watch when you look at CPI right now. One is the component of CPI that is housing and shelter costs, which is a pretty significant factor on pushing CPI up. And the other is wage increases. And the thing about the wage increases and wage inflation is wage inflation will happen as long as there are less opportunities for employment. And in the event that there starts to become more opportunities for employment, then the ability of employees to negotiate higher wages goes down, and that wage inflation comes down. And then on top of that, you have food costs as well, which are kind of the big three components that are leading to inflation at the moment. And if you look at those three things, so let's say we see more job openings, let's say we see the housing sales stay where they're at right now and not have a big peak again, that will help the inflation rate with respect to housing. And then if we can see some easing off with respect to food costs, well, there's a lot to suggest that those three components, as they start to normalize, will see us in a more balanced market, a more balanced economy, and probably a more stable interest rate environment. But the big thing is like, what's the thing that could happen that could create more inflation in one of those categories. And if that happens, so energy costs is another big one. I forgot to mention. If in one of those categories something kicks off and we see prices go up in one of them, we could see inflation start to turn around and go the other direction. So bottom line is, right now in the current economy, we're still in a pretty fragile state. It's a question of whether or not we hit that soft landing, and any one or two bad pieces of news could change that, or any one or two good pieces of news could change that, and that could have a pretty significant direction on where rates go.
Most people that were wrong about how quick rates were going to go down this year, which I certainly was, are now saying, oh, this is great. Variable's going down. People that have had the variable rate have been really taking it on the chin for the past few years. This is great. But then it's like, okay, why are the rates going down? Because unemployment's not looking very good. There's, inflation looks like it's been under control, at least, to this point of us having this conversation. Should we be more concerned about how quick they did go down this year, or are they just getting ahead of it so they can just be like, okay, into next year, they might do that 25-pointer at some point, but we're just going to hold rates now moving forward and see how this plays out?
Well, I think the reason why they increased interest rates so much was to get ahead of things, and now they're really facing that headwind of employment. And the reality is if they're watching the employment numbers as their primary lead indicator, at least I think that's what they're doing. I'm not in the room, but I would suggest that that's probably what they're doing. And if those employment numbers start to go up and up and up and up, then yeah, they're going to try to get ahead of it by reducing interest rates, and they're going to go down more. As far as whether or not they move too quickly bringing them down, I think they probably moved too quickly taking them up in order to curb inflation, and they went way beyond what they could have in order to tighten up the time frame with respect to how long it took to bring inflation back down. So really there's a component of the interest rates that came down, which was bringing them back closer in line to where they should be. And then now it's a question of managing it and how well they manage it.
So we always talk about how, we got down to 0.25 and then raised the fastest, I believe, in history up to that 5% overnight rate. Pre-pandemic, like end of 2019, where was the overnight rate? Was it like 1.75? Like where did it start before the world changed? Realtors, it's time to up your game. Realty Ninja allows you to create a stunning lead capturing and hassle-free website that looks great and will match with your current brand. They are a sponsor of this show, and they're giving listeners 20% off your first year, and you don't pay $1 until you launch. Join the thousands of real estate agents across this country, including Steve, the cheapest person I know that uses their services. realtyninja.com/Tom. And now, back to the podcast. And if we go back there, is that bad of a thing?
I could look it up, but I mean, let's just take a look at variable rates. So variable rates got down to about 1.5%. At the beginning of the pandemic, they were around 2.75%. So, that correlates pretty well to what prime rate was. And, I think we're getting closer to there. I mean, right now, a 5-year variable rate mortgage is priced around 4.5%. So we're not quite down to where we were. There's probably about 1.5%. That's probably why Ben is suggesting that interest rates are going to go down by another 1.5 to 2% in order to get us back to where we were at pre-pandemic levels. But I think, in all likelihood, the path to those rates again, if we ever get back down there, is going to be a lot slower than what the drops have been now or what the increases were in 2022.
Steve, did you
I
look
have
it up?
Here, Tom. I have it here.
So where was it at the end of 2019? What was the overnight?
Man, it's a roller coaster. That thing's like whoop, whoop, whoop.
But it didn't change that much.
When is the beginning of time? It changed a lot more than it changed now. So let's take a look. So this chart I have in front of me starts from the year 2000.
Okay.
The year 2000 up until in 01, it was at almost 6%. It looks like 5.5-ish%, maybe 5.75.
I remember telling people at that time that we'd probably never see rates lower than that.
Yeah, and then so in 02, it dropped to 2%, and then it goes up to 3. And then
can I guess what happened in 08? It dropped a lot.
So from 04 to 08, it went from 2% to 4.25, sorry. Then in 08, it dropped down to, geez, that's low, 0.5%. So it dropped from, basically 4.5 to half over the period of a year. Then it went up.
Bank implemented their mortgage prime, where they didn't honor the full Bank of Canada discount. They only honored it by 15 basis points instead of 10. And that's why if you've got a TD variable rate mortgage, they've never actually given that back to the clients.
Really?
And yeah. So if you're comparing prime at RBC to prime at TD, prime at TD is 15 basis points or 0.15% higher than it is at every other bank, every other institution in Canada. And they've never given it back to the clients. Most people never realized they were paying more.
Then, so 09 and 10, it stayed at a 0.25 point, it looks like. Then it went up to 1. It stayed at 1 from 2010 to halfway through 2014. So it stayed flat. They didn't, they took a vacation, it looks like, during most of the Harper years, and they were like, we're holding this thing at 1% no matter what. Then in 2014, it dropped twice to 0.5 point. And it stayed at 0.5 point, 15, 16. And then in 17, it started to go up. It went from 17, 18, and 19. Sorry, end of 18. It went from 0.5 point to 1.75.
So it was 175 before.
It was at 175 from 8. And remember, I don't know if your markets were the same, but Calgary was going down forever. But our market in half of 18 and then all of 19 was declining because rates were going up.
Ours is 2017.
So then we're at 175 from, it looks like, halfway through 18, and it held flat until March 2020, of which then it was cut 3 times very, very quickly. I think they even had emergency meetings at that point where they were like, we're doing this before the scheduled time. And that brings us to, I guess, what you would call the common era. And we all kind of know what happened after that, if you've been watching this show.
But so Nolan, we're at 3.25 before everything changed and pandemic, crazy inflation, everything that happened. We were at 1.75. So going back to what Ben was saying, is it that crazy to think that if things do get under control, they could get back under 2?
They could get back to
rate?
1. It's been in good years.
Yeah.
It was 0.5% to 1 in years that weren't that bad. These ones are terrible. Sorry.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And I think that largely comes down to 3 things. It's housing costs, it's housing and shelter costs, it's food costs, and it's energy costs. And if those things take a turn in the other direction, then I think it's reasonable to see those interest rates come back closer to what they were before. It all comes down to how well that inflation is being managed, and really, I think the one key thing is housing and energy costs, and energy costs flows through to food costs.
Right. Because I think, like, we talk a lot about immigration and how crazy it got, and now they're turning the taps off. But if we go back in time here and just look at, like, whatever our numbers of immigration were in 2017, 2018, when the overnight rate was where it was at then, and employment was where it was, like, if we get to that point, and I'm not talking about the entire country here, we're talking about certain markets, but Toronto, going back 46 years, in good and bad, has averaged 6.5% growth, compounding on the years that it went up. I know Calgary's a different thing. I get it. But you guys have had your rides in either direction. Like, I know we can't predict what's going to happen, but it's kind of fun on this show to have these conversations. Like, is it that wild to think we could get back to a market that's just hums along again? Is it going to come back too fast?
I mean, it's a potential, but I can't see it right now.
Yeah.
I just can't see it, and the primary reason I can't see it is twofold. One is the population increase relative to the amount of housing is going to keep shelter costs pretty stable, and the second one is, I mean, it's that oil piece, and keep in mind that a lot of those years when when those interest rates were low had a lot to do with oil prices, and people don't realize how much oil prices impact the Canadian economy. It's insane how much of the economy is driven by this thing that our government is trying to eliminate.
Tom, when you think back, end of 2019, like personally, we came out of a pretty bad market with declines. People were selling for less than they wanted. My personal worst year in real estate ever, 2019. And then things started late 2019 to turn around. And before the pandemic hit, January and February were like, okay, we're back to the races. We're back to the races. They actually didn't need stimulation by rate cuts for the real estate market at all. It was terrible. Other things I understand, but the real estate market, I feel like this is the closest I've felt to that market in a long time. Like we've gone through our market this spring into midsummer was abysmal. And then now it has come back to averages. Like you're saying, we just want to be average, right? We're very happy to be average. My whole life, I've been happy to be average looking. So like, that's where we should be. I don't want to be one of those really high performers or one of those really low performers. I want to be like a 5 and just put me right there. People also all say they're 6s or 7s all the time. And they think that's average. It's not. 5 is average. But like, we're getting back to an average to okay market. And I feel like this is the first time since 2019 where I'm like, okay, I feel like maybe I know what to expect here over the next little bit. It's going to be pretty good. I do think that we're not going to see massive price growth, but I do also think that there's a little bit of competition coming back and there's some certainty coming back to some buyers who are making some moves. Like if you have a real job or a government job where you're probably not getting laid off, you feel much more comfortable to act now than you did over the past 4 years, let's say.
And to your point, Steve, the sales numbers they came up in October. They're pretty much in line with what you were talking about with respect to 2018, 2019. They're at similar levels. They're around 40 to 45,000 sales per month. So, I think you're probably not far off on that.
Average is going to feel like above average based on how slow we've been chugging along the last few years. Like we went from insanity to super slow, but never really stopped in the middle. Now we're kind of heading back to the middle, and it's going to feel like, we were using that analogy when things changed. It was like driving 120 to driving 80 feels like you're not moving at all. Now it's like, well, we're driving 100 again, and it's feeling pretty good. But we're not actually going that fast. We're going the speed limit. Or some Ontario highways are now 110, thanks to Ford.
How screwed? Man, I'm really getting my words today. How skewed is the 10-year average, you think, by how crazy 21 was?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe the average, if you just take 21 out, the average is actually a lot lower. You know what I mean? So you can be in an average, maybe an average is a 4. Maybe we're getting there, right? Like, you've got that 1 year that had 660,000 sales across the country or something like that. And like, we've never been there and we're likely not going back. And a good year was 450 anyway. Right. So we've been drug up by this like anomaly year fueled with free money. And by the way, we're going to lock you in your home. So your home becomes your most important thing in your entire life. Right. Not that it isn't most other days too, but I mean, for a lot of people it is, or it very much became at that time. Right. So we've been skewed by this crazy time where maybe the averages should be a lot lower than they're at.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the home sales chart and if you lop off 2020 out to the end of 2023 and you just connected the dots between 2024 and 2019, it's almost like the graph never changed. So if you take those 2 years out, I mean, I'd say we're very much back to a normal market. I'd say we're probably slightly below a normal market given how much immigration has increased and how much the population's increased.
That's a good point. We have way more.
Tom,
people.
didn't you say there was like somebody did a chart? Maybe it was
Chris
like
was
your
doing
office or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where they like, if you cut out all that growth, then your percentage growth, like if it was that same 6% or whatever, we're basically right on track.
They plotted like where we potentially, quote unquote, should be based on 45 years of data. And even after the crazy ups and downs, we're pretty close to like where we should have been by now if we had just tracked on how we've been tracking for a long time. We just had a little bit of roller coaster in the middle there, which
the only data and the only graph that doesn't apply to is CPI, and everything else. If you look at housing growth, if you look at the economy, if you look at GDP, and you lop off that center, like everything's come back down. It went up significantly, and it's come back down enough that you can literally connect the dots, and everything's very much in line with where it was before.
With the inflation data, I think it's like Iceland and New Zealand maybe are the only other places other than Canada that use the shelter cost. Is it mortgage?
Payment.
Mortgage payment.
Mortgage payment. So it's Iceland and Canada.
Iceland and Canada are the only
two. A lot of other people have gone, like I know the US uses something called owner equivalent rent, which I don't know is a better metric. But what they do is they phone people and they go, how much do you think you could rent your house for? And that's their metric for housing inflation. That might not necessarily be a very good measure either.
Well, but let's be clear here. The reason why Canada uses that and has to use it is because of the variable nature of our mortgages, whether it's a variable rate mortgage or a 5-year fixed. Both of those types of mortgages are a variable component when it comes to shelter costs relative to, and New Zealand has the exact same thing. I can't speak for Iceland. New Zealand's mortgages are structured a little bit differently, but they very much have the same variability. But the US, the reason why it's not as relevant of a factor is because literally people will buy a house and they'll have the same payment for 30 years unless they refinance to a lower rate, or they upgrade their property and end up paying a higher rate on the property that they upgrade to. So the way that the US does it is right for the US economy. The way that Canada does it is right for the Canadian economy.
And they went away from the amortizations? No, from term periods after 2008, right? Like they had a lot of changing arms at that point, and now their most common product is a 30-year fixed, which for some reason we can't figure out how to offer that here.
Which you can break, but you can't port, if I'm correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they also have tax benefits with respect to rental properties and whatnot that are hugely beneficial if they sell one property and move to another. So they've got benefits on the other side, which I would probably call it a wash. But there was two things that they blamed the 2008 financial crisis on. One was the ninja mortgages, the no income, no job, no assets, basically the lack of underwriting when it came to mortgages. And the second was the 5-year ARMs, which were essentially, you had a teaser rate for 5 years and then it adjusted to whatever rate it should have been. And the irony of that is the thing that they blame for the US financial crisis in those 5-year ARMs is essentially the way every single 5-year fixed in Canada works.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, sounds familiar.
Yep, exactly. Wow. So when I go down to the States and we talk about 5-year fixed mortgages, they don't understand. And I go, hey, think of it this way. Every mortgage that's on a fixed rate in Canada is essentially a 5-year ARM. And they're like, oh, that sounds dangerous. And when Americans start telling me it's dangerous, I'm like, shit.
Well, people are angry about the new mortgage rules.
Can I set up this question, Steve? Because
you can.
I've been thinking about this for a while. I've been waiting for Nolan to give me an answer on this. Okay, so all the content that we've all been putting out about the new rules that kicked in on December 15th with the 30-year AM for first-time home buyers and the extension on the CMHC cap and the upgrade on CMHC cap to 1.5. Nolan, the internet is furious. I've never seen so many people, and they're right in a lot of cases, being like, this is just indebting us further. Why would you allow this to happen? This is a vehicle that's not going to end well. A lot of people are saying by the end of the mortgage, I'll be in a wheelchair and diapers anyways, so who cares, right? These mortgages are so long. Now, to put context to this before I get your opinion, because I was like, okay, I've been selling real estate since 2014. I realized there was a whole world that happened before me. So I was like, let's see what happened here. So I went back in 2006 in Canada under a conservative government with Stephen Harper. We brought a 40-year amortization mortgage to the table that was not, by the way, just limited to first-time home buyers and zero down. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
0 down 40 year.
0 down 40 year, not limited just to first-time home buyers, but everybody. Rentals too? Okay.
Hey folks, if you're looking for a real estate agent in the city of Toronto, let's face it, you gotta call my buddy Tom Storey of the Storey team and Royal LePage Signature in Toronto, Ontario. They're your obvious choice because Tom is not just the co-host of this podcast. No, he is a real life and top producing real estate agent in the city of Toronto. There's nobody out there that knows the condo market better than Tom and his team in downtown, but they do service the entire city of Toronto and any of your residential real estate needs. So if you're looking for an agent, do not hesitate to reach out to Tom, book a call with him using the link down below in the description of this podcast, and let Tom guide you through your real estate journey. And now back to the podcast.
Now, different economic times, I understand that. I believe from 2006, 2012, they kept knocking it down. Then it was like 35 years. Then 2008, that happened. They brought it down to 30. And then I think in 2012, it stayed where it was until now.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so mad now? Why is it? Were people mad then? Did I miss something? People are furious about this.
And I think before that,
online
Tom,
at least.
When I bought, now I was not educated when I bought my first place. I was just a young guy doing whatever my parents and realtor told me to do, basically. So I didn't understand. But at that time, I believe I had to come up with 10% down in 2005 when I bought my first place. 10% down on a 25-year M. So then they went like the year later, and this actually drove my property value up. That's when they went to like 2006, 40. They went like 40-year 0 down. So a bunch of my friends started getting into the market that had no ability to save the 10% down.
So what's different now than then? Why is it terrible to do this now when we've done this in the past? And it's not even as extreme as it was in the past. Is it just because we're still so fed up that a lot of Canadians are fed up with the current government that it's like, well, you're just doing this as it comes to voting time, too late?
It's politics, really. Yeah. That's all it is. And the irony of this is that the Conservative government introduced the 40-year amortizations and then stripped them out, getting us back down to 25-year amortizations. The reason why was because the longer amortizations increased the housing values, and they stripped them out in order to make it so that housing prices didn't go up too much. Now you've got a Liberal government who, I'm so politically agnostic, and I know I'll get comments in the comment section talking about agnostic and what that means. And really what it means is I really don't care about the political party. I'm indifferent to it. And there were times early on with Justin Trudeau where I was like, you know what? I don't think it's going to be as bad as what everyone thinks it's going to be. And for a period of time, I don't think it was as bad as what a lot of, conservatives believed that it was going to be. But this last 6 to 12 months, I've never seen a government that is so out of touch with reality. And now they're saying, we're going to introduce 30-year, 35-year, 40-year, like lower down payments, whatever they're doing. We're going to introduce this stuff to make housing more affordable. And it's a pretty simple line to draw from the perspective of, if you make it so people qualify for bigger mortgages, that's going to push housing prices up.
Right.
And on top of that, if we're talking about making it more affordable, let's talk about the interest costs. And now you're taking a property that they're going to buy, get a 25-year mortgage on, that's going up in value because everyone else is now getting 40-year mortgages on it. So they're increasing the value of the properties. And at the same time, you're going to increase the interest cost by 20, 30% over the life of their mortgage. Mm-hmm. You're in fact making houses not only less affordable from a nominal perspective, so the price of the home, you're making them significantly less affordable from the long-term cost of the home. All you're doing is bringing payments down, but you're putting a significantly higher burden on the consumer in both the price they're going to pay for the home and the cost that they're going to pay in interest. Like, it's absolute freaking insanity. And we call a spade on it. It's simply a matter of assuming people are dumb. And
Yeah, they've got
lower payments to buy votes.
They got no idea what they're doing. What do they just announced? Their $40 billion deficit's going to be $60 billion. And they're okay with it because apparently GDP rose. Like they have no idea what they're doing. They have less idea what they're doing than the guy that made this set of glasses that put the S on the end of this. Like, nobody's talking to one hand to the other. Look, all my other
how many
glasses
New
over here
Years
say
are we
New Year.
celebrating?
No, everybody else says New Year, and this one set got the S put on the end. Why? Because apparently this company that I ordered off of is run about as good as our government.
And I mean, just to show you how out of touch they are, like Justin Trudeau's at a frickin' Taylor Swift concert, and there's video of him dancing around. Well, there's riots going on in the same city. Like, it's absolutely insane how out of touch they are. This GST rebate, I know so many people that own really big retail businesses that are like, two problems with this. First is the ability for us to implement this in the amount of time you gave us is impossible. So we're going to have a whole bunch of people fighting at cash registers, especially when they don't understand what is and what is exempt and what isn't exempt. And then the other thing is they basically killed the Canadian economy for the first 2 weeks of December because everyone's waiting until December 15th to buy all their Christmas stuff. So it's like, and then the question is the amount that people are going to be able to spend between December 15th and December 25th enough to make up for the amount that people chose not to spend in that time leading up to the period where they could get a 5% discount. Oh, and then as far as it being equitable, it's not, because I get the same ability to buy something for cheaper as somebody else who maybe can't afford to buy the exact same goods because they want their kid to have a really great Christmas. Like, it's completely and utterly not fair to anybody. Retailers right down to the lowest income people, which they always claim that they're trying to help, and that claim is ultimately insane.
How are you feeling about the Canadian dollar heading into 2025? I know Steve's trip to Vegas is going to cost him a little bit more money. Like, are we just sacrificing it at this point? We have we're just okay with it.
I think we're not in control of it.
Yeah.
We really at the mercy of the market and what happens in the US. Now, there's some benefits to our dollar being weak. It makes our exports cheaper, which means that it can be good for the overall GDP in the country. We are an exporting nation, so it has a net benefit. Prior to whoever the guy is that's the Bank of Canada governor right now. I talk so little about economics these days, but prior
Did you
to
forget Tiff's name?
Tiff and the gang?
Prior to Tiff, David Dodge.
Oh,
David
before.
Dodge came from the export-import industry, and his mandate, some people suspected, was to keep the Canadian dollar low so that the exports were cheaper. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really hurt us from the perspective of the overall economy. What it hurts is when we're heading to Vegas and, instead of putting $10 down on black, we're actually putting $15 down on black.
And even though our real estate is now really on sale to everyone in the States, they still can't buy it.
They can't buy it. Yeah. I'm still getting calls, Tom. Most of my calls right now are a post-election American Canadian maybe marriages and stuff, and I'm like, by the way, you realize, so I've got this call a number of times. U.S. income for the husband, wife has Canadian income, but the husband makes more.
Okay,
and they want to buy a house, whether or not they are or one of them is a Canadian citizen or PR, and under BC's speculation tax, if your income comes from outside of Canada, you are a speculator, whether or not you live there with your family or not. So I'm like, have you looked into that? And they're just like sidelined by this stuff. They're like, what are you talking about? They have no idea. And there's lots more people that want to buy here. So when that foreign buyer ban, not that the speculation tax will ever come off, but when that stuff does, I think there's a bunch of people that are very much interested in still being here.
But I'm going to push back on you in this, because for so many years, Steve, me, you, everybody, even when they put in the foreign buyer ban, we're like, it doesn't matter. Foreign buyers weren't actually as big of a problem as everyone's saying. Now we're saying if we take off the ban, it actually is going to make a difference. Like,
but it's
we can't
not
be
nothing.
both.
It's not zero.
It's not like, what was it, less than 5% or something? Was that?
Yeah, sure. It's less than 5%. I just did a video on my channel about flipping. And flipping, they've got a federal flipping tax now in Vancouver, and then across the country as income tax, and then they've got a provincial flipping tax as well, because obviously the federal one wasn't enough. And when we're looking at like actual flippers, houses that were sold within a year, even in the 21 market, it was 3.2% or something like that. And then they found out, oh, by the way, most of them were lower income male owned businesses. So in other words, probably trades companies that have the ability to make a little side cash by flipping a property, right? So that's who was improving property. It wasn't this flipping for the sake of flipping, right? So there's always these scapegoats that come around for this sort of stuff. I don't know if that really answers your question at all.
Just want to push on you on it.
I think the federal government and the BC government, both of those two, have gotten really good at fixing the pinholes and ignoring the gaping holes in the bucket that is Canadian real estate. Like, both of those governments are completely out of touch with reality.
Speaking of which, great segue, Nolan, that you didn't even know was coming. I was watching, my wife watches Steve Saretsky. I don't. She likes him more than me. And she's like, you got to go watch his last show. Fair point, right? He's probably definitely above a 5. But he pointed out that
before you get into that, okay, he might be better looking than you, but if you're a 5 looks wise and he's above a 5 looks wise, and I don't know Steve at all, but just from what I get off of YouTube, like personality, you've got to make up for what.
I'm a 10 in personality. Yeah, I'm an 11. I got an extra.
I think you're like 10 years older than him.
Okay, let me get to my point, guys. Hang on. So he put up something where apparently rumor is that the city of Burnaby, you know, this new fourplex law that is trying to be brought in everywhere, and now BC has brought it in. The city of Burnaby wants $100,000 per door, plus the $60,000 profit, $60,000 in permitting fees. So if you have a rancher bungalow and you want to tear it down and put in a fourplex, your development costs are $360,000 before you start construction. And so I sent that to Ravi, and I'm like, just on Instagram, I was like, hey man, looks like they're working against you. And he says, you know what? That is partially true. But the other thing that they have done is they've actually allowed way more density than even the province suggested. So he is positive, thinking positively about the city of Burnaby being one of the leaders going forward. But I guess if you're going to tie that type of development fees to properties being built, you want to open it up as much as possible, because it's going to be a massive cash cow if it ever becomes successful. The problem is I think it's not going to be successful because they're asking for too much. And then we were actually I was messaging him. I'm like, well, hey, I heard this is what's happening in a different municipality. And his response back to me was that municipality's outlook is bleak for housing. So guess which municipality Steve's looking at moving to in the future, where they're not going to be developing.
Me.
No, Ravi's great. He actually still messages me even after I told him I didn't like his politics. But he's a good dude. Hey, you can be a good dude and have crappy politics, right? Oh. You can.
I mean, I say this all the time. Anybody who aligns themselves with people based on party lines, and especially look at the US right now, there's 2 party lines and you have to fall into one or the other. That's insane. I definitely don't agree with everything that the Democrats agree with, and I don't agree with everything the Republicans agree with. And I have buddies that I don't agree with their politics at all, but the politics shouldn't really matter when it comes to your relationships with people. I heard an interesting stat. Maybe you can confirm this for me. Somebody told me that Surrey is the fastest growing city in Canada right now. Is that true?
I did a bit. I think it has been for a long time. So I just did a video on Surrey, things you should know about it before moving here. And they projected, when I was doing my research, that we would surpass Vancouver in population by the year 2029 at the actual functional city, not the greater Vancouver area, but the actual city, at like 697,000 people in 2029. I can find out that in 2016 the population was like 630.
Wow.
But then I found an article just last week that said the city of Surrey registers their current population at 687 already.
Wow.
So we've got 5 years lead time to when we're supposed to pass, and we're already almost at that number. And then I'm assuming that that is not documenting the amount of probably mostly Indian foreign students that are in the province or in the city, of which is a massive amount of our folks right now filling up basement suites at 6 and 7 people a head or a suite. So I think we're actually already bigger, but it's absolutely a growing city as a result. And I think, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Go on. It is the Tom Storey Show. Go ahead.
No. I was just curious. Do you think it's mostly because it's a cultural thing where people that are new to Canada are going to somewhere that they feel like they're more at home?
If you have,
or is it pricing too? Like, are people just leaving Vancouver, going to those markets because you can get a much bigger house?
I think it's more to do with demographics, because if you've got 30% of your total immigration right now coming from one country, and then that country has kind of got their little settlement area, like, they do in different spots. For every country kind of has that, right? We've got our Korean spots, we've got our Chinese spots, we've got our Indian spots. I think that is definitely a driver. 100% it's a driver. It's also, the city has made a big push to try and be the biggest city in the province, and it will be very quickly. However, we are still, I don't know if I can use this term anymore, but we are still the redheaded stepchild of cities in Greater Vancouver. So,
now, does Vancouver get to include the population that came for the Taylor Swift concerts back at the beginning of the month here? Or
can I tell my Taylor Swift story?
Absolutely.
Do we have time for this?
Are you wearing your bracelet today?
No, I actually was wearing bracelets, and I was just wearing bracelets because my kids make them for me. And then everybody's like, did you go to the Taylor Swift? I'm like, no, man. Anyway.
He only gets bracelets from his kids.
So I'm sitting there in North Delta, and my daughter made me buy a friendship bracelet from her, by the way, which was very entrepreneurial. And I made sure I gave her $5. She's like, I made this for you. It's $5. I'm like,
was there tax on it? Or did she give you the relief over the holidays?
I don't want to out her if Justin Trudeau comes clawing it back at the CRA. He's going to hire 7 more people to find out if my daughter made any money off of her friendship bracelets.
She's got about $30,000. Now, I have to correct this. Even Steve's kids make him pay for the friendship.
Yes, correct. Okay, so I'm in North Delta the other day. My youngest daughter's at a soccer game. And North Delta, Ravi's riding, where my office is. And over me, I'm in the flight path for YVR. So there's just plane after plane just ripping by me. And I'm just like looking up, and I'm like, they're really low. I'm like, oh crap, another one. Because I think they land every 7 minutes at YVR, if I'm not mistaken. So that's like, or maybe it's even less than that. But what I noticed was private jets. A crazy amount. And this was the Sunday of the last concert or whatever. It was the last Eras tour or whatever that was. And I'm like, wow, look at all these private jets. And I didn't even connect the two at the time. And then I heard a news story that something like, I believe the exact number was 129 private jets landed in Vancouver on over the weekend to go see Taylor Swift. So like, people don't realize that's how much money there is out there. There are 129 people, at least, with all of their friends and family who either have or charter private jets to go to a concert. Like, there's a level of wealth that you and I cannot possibly comprehend.
I think it just shows maybe how bad our total economy is, that even Taylor Swift concerts couldn't stimulate, and we still had to do a jumbo cut in December.
I have another story. One more story.
Like, how much money was brought in Toronto,
also
Vancouver,
related to Taylor Swift.
There you go. Nice try.
maybe next year, Swift.
Right.
The one more related to that. So I was talking to an agent and one of his team members, and they were kind of mentioning, I might be butchering this story. I'm definitely butchering this story. Basically, they have this client who was like on the verge of making a move, They couldn't make it work, and it was about a $30,000 to $40,000. Like, we can't do this. They ended up with 4 floor seats to Taylor Swift, of which they bought for $1,200 a piece, which
That's
is
cheap.
okay.
That's
I'm okay
cheap
with that. No, they
compared
bought
to
for
some of the stuff.
On the day of the concert, they were selling for $12,600 and something. They could have sold those 4 tickets and got their new family home. But instead, they had an amazing experience seeing Taylor Swift. So I don't know. I don't get it. Like, that's the priorities of people, though. And I'm saying that's not everybody. For sure, that's not everybody. But
it's a large majority that are willing to spend on things.
So many people went to that stuff, spending stupid money.
But have we not kind of learned as we've gotten older? Sorry, Nolan. Like, do we not want to spend more things on experiences in our lives and with our kids than you got to do a little bit?
For tenant, landlord, or homeowner insurance policies, go to squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show. Use the link in the description. Save $20 when you start your free quote right now.
Otherwise, what the hell's the point? You're going to sit in your house every day?
If my wife had won those tickets, I would have been like, listen, you guys can have one night or we can have $48,000. We're taking the $48,000. Sell those things.
And I'll tell you this. I went to that concert. I'm one of the I was one of the guys in the jet that flew in. No, I didn't take a jet. But I went to that concert. It was absolutely incredible. 60,000 people times 3 concerts. I was at the last one. I've never seen anything like it. But I've seen better produced shows. I think Justin Timberlake's shows that I've been to have been better produced. But I'll tell you what, the connection that she has to her audience. And if you really want to talk about like wealth that we can't fathom, the wealth that she has is because she's so connected to the people. And just listening to her do the acoustic sets and literally the entire stadium sing every single word. And I didn't know any of the words, but like there was a moment where I closed my eyes and it was just insane, the feeling that you got being there. But at the end of the day, this whole like experiences thing, where that has led us to is people think paying money for experiences is better than having things and everything else. And the problem is now that they're willing to pay for experiences, but they're doing the same thing they were doing with buying things, and that's spending money that they didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
That's where things need to change. The way society has come, it's similar to prior to the Great Depression, where it's like, hey, we've got free money all the time, whether it's government subsidies, whether it's free debt or close to free debt, and people are spending money that they don't have, thinking that they're always going to have it. And when the rubber hits the road on this thing, it could be bad at some point when people start to realize that you can't afford stuff, they don't have any money, and the bankruptcies go up and people start going through the same type of crap that they went through in the 70s and the 80s or in the Great Depression. And I think in our lifetime, I mean, the US already saw it in 2008, although it didn't change much down there. People didn't learn the lessons. But I think in our lifetime in Canada, at some point, we're going to see something similar. The question is it 2025 or is it 20 years from now? But if people don't stop changing the way that they spend money, buying out to the maximum purchase price that they can afford when it comes to buying a home at a 40-year amortization, and just kind of YOLOing on the house and experiences, people are going to find themselves in a lot of financial pain. And I don't think people realize how much pain that causes, and that when you go bankrupt or you have a consumer proposal, it's not a, hey, we're even now because we went bankrupt. It's you're facing it for 7 years on everything. And then we still see clients that declared bankruptcy in 2001, 2002, and the bank lenders, when they're looking at the mortgages, they can figure out pretty quickly. We can figure out pretty quickly from somebody's credit report if there's a gap in it, if somebody declared bankruptcy, and those people, if they get lucky, they might get a mortgage, but they're going to face it for the rest of their life if they don't change the way that they're spending and what they're doing. And unfortunately, we've got a government like the Liberals right now who are encouraging that spending by basically making it easier to borrow more and borrow cheaper and get houses that ultimately in the long run are going to cost them significantly more than they would have if the government didn't intervene.
It seems to be that the household income to mortgage amount qualified for, if you're like a typical person applying is like a 4 multiplier at this point, maybe was a 5 previously. We always talk about the fact that like in most of our markets, like maybe Calgary is a bit different, but at least Toronto, Vancouver, it's like, average salary to average home price is like a 12x in Toronto, and no one pays off their home in a year. We know that. But, and again, this, maybe I'm realtoring this, but I'd like your perspective on it, Nolan, but like, you still have to qualify and still they're only giving you 4 times your income. So people that are buying these bigger purchases have a lot of cash or have a lot of equity from the previous place. Maybe they took the 30-year AM on, didn't even think about it, and got lucky that the market doubled in the last 10 years. So they're in the game.
Income.
Or very big income. Right, sure. So does that give us a little bit of like, okay, maybe it's not going to be as much of a disaster as we thought because of the fact that you still got to qualify? Now, I guess people will put in the comments, mortgage fraud, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen, obviously, but
yeah,
you get what I'm going with this.
I think that's just like foreign buyers, though. It's such a small percentage of the market that it's a rounding error. I think that really what it comes down to is this: you don't have to drive far in any city to see the houses that are being built and go 2 or 3 communities over and see the houses that were built 30 years ago and be able to clearly identify that there's a massive difference between the homes that are being consumed today and the homes that were being consumed 20 or 30 years ago. And that preference has changed. Everyone thinks that they should be able to get into the market and buy an average home, but an average home compared to 20 or 30 years ago is double or triple the size and is way more than what anybody needs. Like I'm sitting in my studio in this house that we planned 10 years ago when we bought this house. You developed the basement. We're a 3-person family. And it turns out we didn't even need the size of house that we have for the 3-person family, let alone the basement. We bought probably double the size of house that we actually need. And that's what's happening across the country is everyone is buying way more house than what they need. And their ideas with respect to what a house should be are so beyond what they actually need. And you need to look no further than the people that Steve was talking about earlier. They're living in basement suites with 7, 8 people in those basement suites. We don't need the size of properties that we have. And I think that for first-time home buyers or people who are in the market, I think that should be the consideration that they should be making is how much home do I actually need? Do I need a massive mansion, or could I buy a 20, 30-year home, put nice finishings in it so it looks like it's the bigger home from a finishing perspective and really have a place that's easier to clean, more manageable financially, and that really does have more space than what you probably need anyways.
I was driving down the street the other day and I noticed a Porsche 911. I'm not sure which model, but I'm assuming about 180 grand or more. And it's parked on the street. And I've always loved Porsches. I think they're fantastic. I'll never own one. I'm way too cheap. So I noticed this car, and then I've started noticing it again and again and again. My little nephew's kind of into cars, lives in the same neighborhood, and we're kind of talking about it. I realized this car is parked on the street every day. It's not parked in the driveway. It's not parked in the garage. I'm sitting here going, that's somebody that lives in a basement suite. Consider how screwed up that spending model is. I'm renting some now. Maybe it's somebody who's currently in a divorce and they're coming out of, and they just need somewhere temporary to stay. Like maybe. But if you have a Porsche and you're parking on the street because you live in a basement suite and there's no parking for you at the property that you're renting, priorities, right?
And their annual income is probably less than the value of that Porsche. They're probably making, let's assume they're making 150 grand a year. That Porsche is probably worth 180 grand a year. How ridiculous is that? I got a good story for you guys. I have a 2016 Ford F-150 that has been hit so many times that the paint might as well be 2 years old on it. Like it looks like a brand new truck. And it's got 200,000 kilometers on it. And I went to my mechanic a couple weeks ago and I said, okay, let's upgrade the turbos that are going on it. Let's upgrade the catalytic converters. Let's upgrade the manifolds because there's a broken bolt. Let's do the whole thing. He's like, it's going to be $15,000. You might as well buy a new truck. And I went, well, no, hold on a second. People don't understand that this is a durable good. It's not something that is disposable. I bought that truck in 2016 for $55,000. The list price on it was $75,000. So that gives you an indication of where the economy was at back then. I've put about $10,000 into the suspension on it. So let's call that $65,000. Let's say I had to put a brand new engine in it for $20,000. I'd be all in on that truck for $85,000. You know what it would cost me to replace it right now?
What do those sell for? 100 and something? 110? Are they really that high? Yeah.
$130,000. So for me to just put a brand new engine in this thing, lifetime, it's considerably cheaper than what it would be to purchase a new vehicle. And if I went and got a lease payment on that vehicle, it'd be $1,000, $1,500 a month. I can literally, but I'd have to have that indefinitely, or I can spend $15,000 on an engine, and basically over 10 months, I have a $1,500 a month payment if I assume that I was going to create payments on it equivalent to what a lease payment would be. And then I'm done for, 3 to 5 years after that. Like the way that we think about things, and he thought I was crazy. And then I showed him the math and he's like, oh man, we tell people to buy new vehicles all the time. Like the bones on, if that truck's worth $10,000 today and I put $20,000 into it, I still can't even get close to that buying a new one.
But how many kilometers can you get to before you're like, okay, I have to get something? Like, is 300 the number? What's the number?
No, if you're doing good maintenance, you can last a heck of a long time. I will say this is actually...
But what's the real number? Like, how far can you actually go before it's like unsafe?
Honestly, it's probably until you crash it. That's when these vehicles come off the road. Because look around, you can see people who are buying or who are driving, 15, 20-year-old trucks, 15, 20-year-old cars. Somebody's buying them. They're the lower income people that are buying them going, well, this is cheaper than buying a brand new vehicle. But there's a certain segment of the population who's like, I need a new vehicle every 4 years. And their lifetime cost of vehicles is way higher than if they just bought something that was amazing right out of the gate and then took care of it for 15 years.
An indicator that I've kind of had for how tough maybe the markets get, or how tough, the economy's getting right now, is I've started kind of pointing it out to my wife when we're driving around. Broken down cars. I can't remember the last time I saw a broken down car. And then within the last 3 or 4 months, I'm seeing 1 a day, 2 a day. And I'm just like, okay, so these to me, and they're usually much older vehicles that you might expect to be broken down. But that's obviously then the person that can't then afford the new car, right? And they're now probably not having enough money in order to do maintenance on the vehicle in order to keep it going. So that's like I was like, oh, maybe things are getting bad, and that's the indicator that I have. So I don't know if that's I'm seeing
Cybertrucks every day.
Cybertrucks are everywhere. They're already turning super stupid. They're cool.
See those?
I secretly like it. The ones where they have like the wrap on it and it looks like a Batmobile or something. It's all blacked out. Honestly, I'm like, I kind of like.
No, they're super cool. The problem is now everybody's ordered one, and when you're seeing like, somebody's grandma driving down the street in one, they're just not cool anymore. And so I don't know. They're a crazy, wacky thing, and I'm just glad they're there. I would never buy one.
They're so dumb though. I mean, we were in Richmond on Monday at this mall that had at least 25, if not 40 Tesla charging stations.
Yeah.
And there's 25 to 40 idiots sitting in there waiting for their vehicles to charge. Meanwhile, I'm going, people who wait in line at Costco for 15 minutes to get gas to save 8 cents, I think are the stupidest people on the planet until you see a Tesla charger station that's full of Teslas and there's a lineup to wait to charge your vehicle.
Not everyone
Vancouver
thinks
has so many Teslas compared to anywhere else in the world. We actually have a name for them now.
To fuel them because the chargers are being powered by gas.
Well, we're all business owners, so we sometimes think about our time as what is our value per hour. So I get the argument that you sitting there for an hour, it might actually just be cheaper to fill up your car with gas. Environmental conversation is obviously different, and we're not going to do that today, but I get what you mean.
We call them all my friends and realtor friends that are listening, and if you are listening out there right now and you drive a Tesla, I will never say it to your face, but I can't see you right now. So I'm going to let you know. Everybody that doesn't have a Tesla calls them a douche canoe. So just remember that. And you are steering your douche canoe down the street now. So we're all laughing at you. And then we all think you're pretty smart because they're actually super fun cars too. But
I think for the right person, they are the right vehicle, but the right person is somebody who doesn't need to go to a Tesla charger to fill them up. And if you're leaving a city, like I can literally drive from where I'm at in Calgary to Steve's house in Vancouver on one tank of gas and not have to wait 30 minutes in Merritt to charge my vehicle. If you're leaving the city, I don't think they're the right vehicle for you. But if you're not having to go far, I think they're awesome. But at that point, I also think you should consider an electric bicycle because that's even better for the environment and your health.
I'm too scared to ride a bike in Toronto, man. I don't care about the bike lanes. You lose the battle with the car every time. So I'm too scared to ride a bike in
there was
Toronto.
a dude, you know where the Massey Tunnel is? It's just between Delta and Richmond here. So it's a tunnel. And there was Instagram of a guy or a TikTok or whatever of a guy riding his electric stand-up scooter on the freeway in the tunnel. And I was like, oh, well, I don't think that's legal, but
And sorry, Tom, I always forget how much of a better city that Calgary is than Toronto because we actually have bike paths that you could go from anywhere in the city to anywhere in the city. I forget that you guys have to compete with the vehicles.
Our downtown ones, and there's a lot of controversy on removing some right now and things like that. But you lose a car, you lose a battle with a car every time, even if you made the right move on the bicycle. So that's how I think about it. Nolan, I know you have a heart out.
In Calgary, you're not inhibited from people that want to be there, so you got lots of space.
Nolan, I know you got a heart out, so I just want to.
Yes. They're not going to Calgary.
I want to make sure someone listening this far in the episode, we've got a little bit long today. You've been doing something on top of the mortgage side of things, and I know there's realtors that listen to this. Me and Steve have learned so much from you. There's no one that's taught me as much about YouTube as you have. You've really helped what we're doing. Anything you can say to the people that are listening on the real estate side for what you're doing on that side? Because it's a little bit different than the mortgage stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from a real estate perspective right now, if you're trying to get famous on Instagram to sell houses, you're probably wasting your time. We've had a lot of success. We've got a formula for it where we can pretty much predict income based on number of views on YouTube. If real estate agents aren't using YouTube as a tool to, one, educate their clients, and two, gather an audience of clients, I think they're crazy. YouTube's the second biggest search engine on the planet, owned by the biggest search engine on the planet. The AI is so good. I'll never forget going to your event, Tom, and you saying exactly what you just said when you were introducing me, and then the number of realtors in the room had no clue who I was, even though 35% of Canadians who buy a house in Canada are exposed to my educational content. The targeting on that platform is so good. And if you're not making videos on YouTube to attract clients, I think you're absolutely insane. And I'll tell you this, there's not a single market in North America. The closest two are Dallas and Calgary that are completely saturated with realtors on YouTube. And the ones who are getting on it are making insane amounts of money and helping more people as a result. So yeah, I've started a new company where I'm teaching people how to do YouTube, and they're all having an incredible amount of success. And I attribute that a lot to the conversations that we had, and seeing what you guys were doing with very small subscriber accounts early on, and now what you guys are doing with very big channels that are garnering a lot of influence in your markets. And really, I just see the YouTube thing and teaching people how to do YouTube as my opportunity to help really good realtors help more people. And that's my ripple effect in the world. You throw that stone in the water and you see the ripples go out. Well, I spent the last 4 years on YouTube helping Canadians, and now I get this opportunity to help real estate agents help more Canadians. And that in my world allows me to help more people. So if you've got realtors or if you're a realtor who wants to find a way to get more business and really get the notoriety that good realtors deserve, you don't have to buy billboards anymore. You can do a lot of great content and become really, really well known really quickly and help a lot more people. if you just understand that there's one platform out there today that gives you the exposure, and that's the one that we're on right now.
It's the best thing I ever did for my business. And I really mean that. Like, taking it seriously, being consistent with it, spend time and money on it. But man, and more than anything, and this is going back to the people listening to this that are not in the industry, but just want to buy or sell a house. I've become way better at my job and learned so much more by forcing myself to do videos and educate myself and learn things. I've become better at my job by filming myself. And I think that's something people miss. I know you're also helping other business owners that are not just real estate build as well. So anyone that's listening, keep that in mind. We'll make sure Nolan's information is down below if you want to reach out to him about this. Nolan, thank you for coming on. I always love chatting with you, and Steve has to be here too, but it's nice to chat with Steve sometimes also. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope 2024 was what you're looking for. And if it wasn't, next year there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think Nolan said something about the fact that mortgages are going down and economy's good. So we're all set for next year, right?
Absolutely. Hey, 2025 will be what you make it. And if you choose to make it amazing, it will be. And if you choose to let the economy and politics act on you, then you're going to have a shitty year. But at the end of the day, it's what you make of it.
Awesome. Steve, any final words for this year on this podcast?
I think this is the first year, if everything goes well and my passport shows up, my passport's here. It's the families that aren't. I'll be celebrating New Year outside of the country.
With an American dollar?
Well, I mean, if I can afford one. I think they're the same price as Bitcoin at the moment. So I'm not quite sure, but we'll see.
Thank you, everybody, for an amazing year on the podcast. We really appreciate you watching and listening, and we will be back in 2025. We are just getting started. Bye.